everybody. Thank you so much for coming to join us today. We have Kirk, Shelton, and Dawnnesha Smith with the Department of Consumer Affairs, and will be educating all of us on real estate fraud and foreclosure prevention. Their presentation is going to be open, so if you have questions during, feel free to step up to the mic so everyone can hear the question. It's going to be just a free-flowing presentation, so as they're presenting, just feel free to interact and get involved. All right, thank you, and join me in welcoming Kirk and Dawnnesha.
All right, so thank you so much for having us today. It is great to get to have this opportunity to speak with all of you. I live in San Gabriel Valley, and I'm a homeowner here, so I have a special affinity for getting to talk to this group. It's been to get to come home to speak with you today. I want to introduce you to Dawnnesha Smith. Dawnnesha Smith has been with, she's been with the department for 8 years and has served in a variety of roles. She joined us as an investigator. She served as a supervising investigator over real estate fraud and over identity theft. And now she leads our outreach and education team and is our premier educator in all things consumer affairs, including real estate fraud and foreclosure, what we're going to be talking about today. So without any further ado, let me turn it over to Dawnnesha.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to see so many faces here today. We're going to give you an overview of our department. By a show of hands, how many of you have never heard of the County of Los Angeles Department of Consumer Affairs? Don't be shy. I won't be offended, I promise. I'm sure there's more of you. So this is a great opportunity for Kirk and I to talk to you about our services and all the great things we do for consumers, and to also educate you a bit on real estate fraud and foreclosure prevention. So as Susie mentioned, this is very informal, so if you have questions during the presentation, just go ahead and raise your hand. So why do we exist? What is our mission? Well, we aim to provide a fair and vibrant marketplace in the County of Los Angeles, and we attempt to do that through education, consumer advocacy, and complaint resolution. So I'm sure many of you have heard of the Better Business Bureau, also known as the BBB. Usually people go to them when they've been ripped off by a business. Well, think of us along those same lines. We kind of operate in the same way. Consumers that have been wronged or deceived in the marketplace, either by a con artist or a shady business, they come to us and file a complaint. But our services go far beyond what the Better Business Bureau provides. And so we'll get into that in more detail as we progress through the presentation. We are a consumer protection agency dedicated to a variety of consumer protection issues. So tenants that are having disputes with landlords, or homeowners that are experiencing real estate fraud, or consumers that want to sue in small claims and they just don't understand the process. We cover all of those areas and more. In addition to dealing with consumer protection issues, we are also the central reporting agency for real estate fraud in the county. So real estate fraud victims come to us and we triage the complaints. We will assess the complaints and decide whether or not they simply need counseling or information over the phone, or whether or not we need to open an investigation, or if their complaint is very serious in nature, we may partner with a law enforcement or prosecuting agency to assist them. One of the great things about our department is that all of our services are free, completely free. The only thing that we require is that you are a resident of the County of Los Angeles. Beyond that, there is no additional criteria and there is absolutely no charge. Our website address is dca.lacounty.gov. We've recently revamped our website to make it more user-friendly. Consumers can now file a complaint with us directly on our website, where you see the file a complaint enclosed in the red circle. So no longer is there a need for consumers to come into our office to fill out a paper complaint form. With that being said, we welcome walk-ins, and we certainly, we have an open door policy. We accept walk-ins Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. But for those that find it an inconvenience, they can simply go onto our website and file a complaint, or you can ask us a question as well. So maybe you don't necessarily need to file a complaint. Maybe you haven't been defrauded or victimized in any way, but you just have a general consumer question. You can also submit your question to us on our website, and we will reply, I believe, within 48 hours. One of my favorite features about our new website is the Google Translate feature. So if you were to click on the language button on the top of the screen there, you would see a drop-down list of over 100 languages. And so you can have the website translated into the language of your choice. Our consumer protection model is threefold. Education, outreach, and advocacy is very important. As was mentioned earlier, I supervise our consumer outreach division, and outreach is very important when it comes to consumer protection issues, because most of the complaints that come through our doors could have been prevented if that consumer would have either known their rights as a consumer or known how to spot a red flag. So this is where education and outreach comes in. We also do, investigations to help people that have been ripped off, but education and outreach tries to be a bit more proactive. So we go to churches, schools, community groups to educate people on their rights and our services so that hopefully they don't become a victim of fraud. So when a consumer comes to us with an issue, usually they're going to fall into one of these categories. They're either going to need counseling and information, or we're going to help them save their home from foreclosure. We may mediate their dispute, we may investigate their dispute, or we may counsel them on how to proceed in resolving their issue in small claims court. And at times, we do make referrals to other agencies. Consumer protection is a large industry, and we think of ourselves as a one-stop shop, but there are times where another agency may be better suited. For example, if a homeowner were to come to us with a problem with their contractor, we would refer them to the Contractor State License Board. So at times we do make referrals to other agencies if we believe that agency is better suited to handle their issue. And again, how consumers can reach us, they can come into our office. We're located in downtown Los Angeles at Temple and Hill. They can file a complaint with us online. They're more than welcome to call us, and they can reach out to us on Twitter and Facebook as well.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is it only pertaining to homeowners, or is it discrimination? Does it fall under different criteria as well?
So one of the things that we try to do in consumer affairs is we try to be a one-stop shop for all kinds of consumer issues, and there's so many. I mean, we're all consumers. Every day we're doing consumer transactions, and there's so many different agencies out there that help with consumer issues. It's really difficult sometimes for people to navigate which one to go to. And so one of the services we offer is that even if it's a type of complaint that we can't deal with ourselves because maybe it has state jurisdiction or it's dealt with another local agency, we keep that information, and our counselors know all of that, so if you contact us, even if it's not something we can help you with, we can be the last stop you have to go to before you get to that person. So even things like that may be handled by fair housing. If they come to us and talk to us about that problem, we'll identify what the issue is, and we'll send them in the right direction. So we really encourage any type of consumer issue, any kind of purchase, homeowners, tenants, landlords, anything like that. Come and give us a call and let us either see if we can help you, and if not, we can point you in the right direction so that they don't have to just keep making call after call trying to find the right agency. We can send them the right thing, so if it's not us, the next stop will be for them.
Thank you.
Okay. So why would a consumer come to us? What are the benefits of using our services? Why not go to another agency? One of the best features about using our services or coming to our department is that it's one-on-one assistance. A lot of other agencies that exist only track complaint data, and they don't necessarily work with you one-on-one to get a complaint resolved. So in terms of real estate fraud, when someone comes to us with an allegation that they've been involved in some type of fraudulent transaction, we open a case. That case is assigned to an investigator. That consumer is given that investigator's name, email. There is ongoing communication between the victim and the investigator until the resolution of that complaint. So it's one-on-one assistance. It's also free, so consumers have nothing to lose. There's no charge. We're a government agency. We try to act as a neutral third party, so we're not persuaded by any particular company or industry. And we receive a lot of our training from respected agencies like the city attorney and the district attorney's office. So we know what trends they're looking for. We know the type of cases they want. We know, what kind of investigative guidelines they have. And so at times it is easier for us to resolve a complaint on a consumer's behalf versus them trying to resolve it on their own. Okay, I kind of mentioned this already. But in addition to working with, community groups, we do a lot of work with youth and young adults, particularly foster and probation youth, to teach them life skills and how to be a smart consumer so that hopefully they never have to file a complaint with us and that they'll be educated on their rights as a consumer. We also work a lot with senior citizens. We go to senior centers throughout the county because seniors tend to be very vulnerable to elder financial abuse and real estate fraud and some of the other issues that we've discussed. At times, a consumer may not be a victim of fraud and they may just need information. So a homeowner may call us and say, I received a grant deed in the mail. Can you explain to me what this is? We can give them counseling and information over the phone. So you don't think of us as a department that only accepts victims of fraud. We can assist all consumers regardless of what their issue is. And we also do free mediations. This is a great alternative for someone who can't afford to hire an attorney and go to court. We do mediations. We have third-party trained neutral mediators that will assist both parties in reaching a resolution. And mediation tends to have a greater satisfaction at the end because you get buy-in from both parties. Both parties are able to air their frustrations and discuss their issue. And at the end, they feel a greater sense of satisfaction rather than going to court and having a judge render a decision. And in terms of real estate issues, mediation might be beneficial. I know at times there are issues when a buyer may want to cancel escrow, right? And then they want their deposit back. That might be a good avenue for mediation. Complaint investigations. So most of the time, our investigators are able to resolve the complaints internally in-house, but there are times in more serious cases where we occasionally partner with other law enforcement agencies. In this photo here, I hope you can all see the pots and pans there. Well, there was a company that was doing door-to-door solicitations. So they were going from door to door, house to house in Spanish-speaking neighborhoods, and they were selling these pots and pans. And they had a very elaborate sales pitch. And the way they advertised these pots and pans is that they were not just ordinary pots and pans. If you cooked your food in these pots and pans, they would take out the impurities in your food. They would help to make you healthier. Whatever health issue you had or whatever ailment you had, you would see an improvement by cooking your food in these pots and pans. So that was a classic example of false advertising. We accepted those complaints. We did the investigation and interviewed the victims. I believe We actually did an undercover operation there. Long story short, we ended up working with the Attorney General's office. They accepted the case as a civil case and received a $3.5 million settlement against the company. So I always urge consumers, file a complaint with us. You have nothing to lose. Don't think that your issue is too big or too small. Don't feel embarrassed to file a complaint with us. I guarantee you, if it's happened to you, it's probably happening to others. And the thing about investigations is there's power in numbers. So the more complaints we have, the stronger case that we have. Okay, so now, are there any questions on our services before we continue? Yes.
How many complaints do you receive every week?
All right. So we get about 100 consumer complaints each week. And they run the gambit. They run everything from car purchases to real estate fraud to landlord-tenant kinds of issues. And that's just the ones we receive as complaints that come in. We speak to about 300 people on the phone each day, and then about double that, another 300 get information, call us in and get information off our recorded messages, and don't speak with a counselor.
There's a hand in the back.
Question, when you talk about 3.5 million job damage there, that 3.5 million goes to the consumer or goes to the local government?
So
The restitution.
Yeah.
Yes, the restitution went to the victims. Were there other questions?
The whole amount go to the victims or part of it?
So I think
whole of them.
so there were other in that agreement. There were other stipulations. They had to pay an audit company to come in and follow up with consumers to find out if they were actually following the agreement and the settlement. And so a portion of it went to that. A portion I think went to cover investigative fees by the Attorney General's office. So there were some other fees involved, but the vast majority of it went back to the consumers.
Yes, ma'am.
If issues arises from resident, between resident and a city government, can you, department, help to mediate or resolve that?
That's a really good question. And in our investigation side, no. Our jurisdiction does not extend to other local governments, state or federal or other locals. What we can do sometimes is the mediation program. We have had some success in the mediation program because the mediation program is completely voluntary. Both sides have to agree. In some situations, the local government actually wants to participate in that program because it puts someone else in between. It gives a neutral third party that helps facilitate the conversation. So our mediation program is available for those and can be used.
Thank you.
What happens if the service provider and the consumer decide the agreement that is something like arbitration, instead of going to the court, go to the arbitration, whatever. So what can your department do about
Mandatory arbitration clauses.
It really depends. In terms of our fraud investigations, we have come across cases where the suspect, or the vendor as we say, they know that they're running an illegal business. And so what they do to try to protect themselves is when they enter into a contract with the consumer, they tell them that they're forfeiting their rights or they're waiving their rights to complaints or future damages. But if that transaction was the result of fraud, then that arbitration clause or that waiver doesn't hold up in court. Now, under normal situations, let's say there was no fraud involved, if you as a consumer sign something indicating that if a problem arises, you will go through arbitration, then yes, that is binding. But you really have to review everything on a case-by-case basis because every situation is different.
So in those cases, we recommend people do bring those to us when they have those questions because we can provide some expert guidance on really what the situation actually is and if that is true. And we might just tell them, I'd say, you know what, the business is exactly right. That is what you signed. Or maybe we'll see some other things. So we do ask that give us a chance to look at those kind of documents.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
What
few questions. Number one, I assume you guys have arbitrator and mediator, right? And how do you guys qualify for these arbitrator or mediator?
So we don't do arbitration, but we do have mediators. We do mediation.
So yeah, so we have two mediation programs. One part of it is a community mediation program, and that's purely voluntary on both sides. That's members of the public come to us, say we have a dispute, can you contact the second party and see if they're willing to mediate? And we do, and if they are, then our mediator sits down with them and works out the solution. We also have a court program where we work with the courts. Those are a little less voluntary because the judge in those cases says, why don't you step outside and work on this before you come back to me? So those it's a little more kind of encouraged by the court. And it's all the same mediators. Many of our mediators in the Court Connected program are actually attorneys that have law degrees, but they don't have to be in all situations. And so it makes, but yeah, we don't have an arbitration program. Arbitration is not a service that we offer.
And we also have,
Your employees,
I'm sorry?
mediator are not the employee of your department, right?
They are. So the mediators can be DCA employees. And it's also volunteers. We also train community volunteers who can come in and do that. It's a mix.
Yes.
I wonder, are you going to bring up some of the example, the past cases, or you don't need to mention about the name and some of the cases, and you can share with us, and then what we can learn from it, or rather than obviously you have a good organization, you have a lot more to offer, or are you just advertising and what your company offering to help?
Yes, we have a few examples that we can share with you later in the presentation.
Okay.
I would love to.
Yes, sir.
If I call to make a complaint, how quickly can you go to that specific case? Because my experience is, when I call DRE, it takes a long time for them to investigate a specific case. In the meantime, it could take 1 year. In the meantime, the deal is a mess. Say, example, a guy make the counter offer. He claims he's not an agent, but I can tell, look at the DRE site, he's a real estate agent. Okay. He just have a different location. Things like that obviously is fraudulent. But if I have a case like that, I complain to you guys, how quickly can you guys get into it? Or will you refer to DRE?
Yeah, so in an instance like that, if DRE has jurisdiction in it and it has the regulatory authority, we would probably work with them and refer that over to them. We don't want to, if there's another agency that has specific authority in that area, that they're going to have more tools and more ways of helping the consumer, so we're probably going to just connect with them. In a situation where it's kind of a gray area or there's overlapping authority, those we will take. And when a complaint comes in, it's processed within 24 hours, so same day or by that time next day. We send it out to the vendor, a chance for them to respond. So we want to get both sides of the story. So they have 10 days to respond to us, about 2 weeks. And then at that point, it's assigned to an investigator or sooner. And if it's an urgent case that could involve somebody losing their home, a repossession of a car, stuff, huge life impacts, those will be moved even faster because we understand there's time constraints. But usually it would be processed same day, 2 weeks for the business to respond, and then assigned to an investigator. From there, it's going to matter a little. Our standard is we try to resolve cases within 30 days, especially for real estate cases. It can often take longer than that because it's more complex and there's more things to look at. So that at that point it becomes case specific, but it's not just sitting there it's not sitting on a desk somewhere. It's not sitting in backlog. They're getting worked immediately. As soon as they come in, the process starts and they're moving forward on them.
Okay, so let's move forward and talk about some examples of real estate fraud that we've seen at our department. The first is the government look-alike documents. So here's an example. Usually, after a new homeowner closes escrow, they receive grant deed offers in the mail. Looks kind of like that top portion. It looks very official looking, right? It's got the barcode, it's got the same lettering and the same coloring as you would expect from a document that comes from the treasurer tax collector. And it says that you need to purchase a certified copy of your grant deed. And it says having a certified copy of your grant deed will prevent foreclosure. I'm glad I hear some people laughing because we know that that's absolutely not true, right? And we also know that when someone closes escrow, they're going to receive a copy of their grant deed in the mail anyway, so there really is no need to pay for something like this. And I wasn't able to show you the entire solicitation, but these offers or these solicitations are pretty expensive. I think they are anywhere from like $89 to $125, and they use very threatening language. You know, act now. They even give you a deadline. Reply by this date. Make sure you have a certified copy of your grant deed, because you're going to have to prove that you own this home. So just remind your, potential home buyers as you're working with them that they're going to get an official copy of their grant deed in the mail when they close escrow. And if they ever lose it or they need another copy, they can simply go to the registrar recorder's office and purchase another one at a minimal cost. And then this down here is a copy of a picture of one of the envelopes. And the envelope, again, looks very official, right? When you see that come in the mail, you're going to pay attention to it because it looks like something that you should open. It's completely bogus. And we've gotten complaints from homeowners that have paid for this service and either never received their certified grant deed or they received a grant deed for someone else's property.
Let me just step in that saying real fast.
Yes.
While we're on that topic. Each year, Department of Consumer Affairs sees about 100,000 people one-on-one. People who we talk to on the phone, come and visit our offices. We work through complaint. It's a lot of people, but LA County is over 10 million people. And so we have a chance to interact with a lot of people, but not everyone. And that's why talking to groups like this is so important to us, because talking to you, I am sure that within the expertise in this room, you're interacting with in a combined thousands of people each year who are experiencing these very same problems that we're helping people with each day, but they may not know about our services. They may not know about the options available to them. They may not know about their rights. And so having an opportunity to speak with you and then having you share this information with the people that you work with each day, that's a huge way of us helping to get that message out. Our goal is to have a fair and vibrant marketplace, as Dawnnesha mentioned. And we love to see consumer transactions taking place. We love to see people purchasing homes, buying cars. We want them to be purchasing, saving that money using on legitimate transactions. What really breaks our heart is when people spend money on things like this, where they're paying a lot of money for a service they're not receiving. And so that's where you can really help us and get that information out there. Help us keep money in consumers' pockets so they can spend it on the real purchases that really matter, things like buying a new home.
Okay, have you heard of the phony property tax reassessment offers? So this is what a real tax bill looks like. Comes from the Los Angeles County Tax Collector's Office. Most of us pay our taxes in 2 installments twice a year. This is a bogus solicitation that hundreds and hundreds of homeowners receive throughout the county. And as you can see, it was made to look exactly like a real tax bill. Now, the bogus solicitation is an offer to have your property tax reassessed. When the housing market, started to decline, many people found themselves in situations where their property tax value was too high. They jumped at a chance to have their property taxes reassessed at a lower value, which is what this solicitation offers. The problem is that it's coming from a third-party company that is completely unrelated to the county. So as you see here, it says Property Tax Adjustment Services. That has nothing to do with the County of Los Angeles. And in their solicitation, they said, okay, we can reduce your property taxes if you just send us a payment of $189. We received over 800 complaints against Property Tax Adjustment Services. Homeowners paid the fee and, of course, didn't see a reduction in their property tax bill. Now, anyone in that situation can come to the county, to the assessor's office, and submit a request for free to have the assessor analyze their property tax value to determine if they qualify for a reassessment. So that service is available through the county for free. There is no need to pay anyone for that service. Foreclosure fraud.
All right. So I can talk about some numbers. So just to, I mean, I think this audience in particular, you've lived through this recently. You've seen what was happening with the foreclosures in LA County. You were seeing this problem firsthand. As you can see, this kind of gives us some context on where it's gone over the last 7 years or so. In 2005, we were looking at about 16,000. NOD stands for Notice of Default, the beginning of the foreclosure process. 16,000 a little over in 2005, up to a height of over 100,000 by 2009. This was just a huge problem that impacted communities throughout our county. And going to the next slide, we transfer that from Notice of Default to, these are actually Notice of Trustee sales. And so, once again, huge number of people who are actually getting to the end of the foreclosure process and losing their homes in foreclosure sales. And it had a massive impact on our communities. It had homeowners were leaving their homes, kids were leaving schools, property values were getting decimated. Had a big impact. And our department, local government leaders really felt like we needed to do something to help provide additional assistance to help lenders working with their, help homeowners working with their lenders to help try to avoid that problem and explore all of their options they could for dealing with that.
Okay. So, foreclosure consultants. This is, a great symbol of what a foreclosure consultant does, because they identify with a group and they say, hey, I'm just like you. So when people are in foreclosure, as you know, they are stressed out, they are overwhelmed, they are, talking to various representatives at their bank or their servicer, and they want to save their home. And someone approaches them and they say, you know what, for a fee, I guarantee you a loan modification in 30 days. Or I guarantee you that I can get you a principal reduction. Those are foreclosure consultants. The vast majority of foreclosure consultant fraud that we've seen have been from people that are not licensed through BRE. But they make all sorts of claims. They say that they'll save the home from foreclosure, get you a principal reduction, get you a forbearance. They will say whatever it takes to steal money from homeowners in a desperate situation. These are some of the key laws that apply to foreclosure consultants. A legitimate foreclosure consultant would have to abide by all of these, and these are found in the California Civil Code. That's what the CC stands for. They would have to be registered with the Department of Justice. They would have to have a $100,000 bond. They would have to give the homeowner a 5-day right to cancel and give them the contract in the language used to verbally negotiate the deal. And as Kirk mentioned earlier, before being the community outreach manager for our department, I spent some time doing real estate fraud investigations. And I know from my own experience, we never saw a foreclosure consultant that abided by these rules or these laws. The problem of foreclosure fraud got so out of hand that in 2009, the governor signed an emergency bill known as SB 94 or Senate Bill 94. And this law prohibits attorneys and others from charging or receiving an upfront fee on the promise of saving someone's home or modifying their mortgage. In addition to that, the following year, a federal law went into effect. It is known as MARS, M-A-R-S, or the Mortgage Assistance Relief Service Rule. And that law is administered by the Federal Trade Commission, also known as the FTC. So in addition to SB 94, a foreclosure consultant, not only can they not charge an advance fee anymore, but they also, according to this law, have to get an offer to modify the home in writing. They have to present that written offer to the homeowner, and then the homeowner gets the chance to either accept or deny. If the homeowner denies that proposal, then they do not have to pay the foreclosure consultant. This also forbids foreclosure consultants from saying that they are associated with a government agency, because a lot of companies were doing that as well to trick homeowners into paying for their service. Yes.
Question, if a homeowner had paid upfront fees to help with the modification and avoiding foreclosure, is there a time limit that can go back to try and collect those funds?
Yes, they can file a complaint with us. We would open an investigation to try to recover those funds. The biggest problem that we see with foreclosure consultants is that they're what we call fly-by-night companies. They're literally here today, gone tomorrow. You know, they find an office space that's available for lease. They rent it out for a week. They try to victimize as many homeowners as they can, and then they're gone. They've moved out of the building. The numbers are disconnected. Many times we found that they don't use their real name. They use the pay-as-you-go cell phones, which are very hard to track, you know, who owns that phone. So that's probably the biggest hurdle is finding them or locating them. But yes, homeowners that have paid for that, let's say it was 6 months ago or last year, they're welcome to file a complaint with us, and we would do our best to try to assist them.
Is it a 1 year going back, or could it go back to like 08, 09?
The law kicked in. When did the law kick in?
The emergency bill kicked in 2009. Yeah. But the general rule of thumb, if there was a contract, is 4 years. Yeah, that's generally the statute of limitation for real estate fraud cases. So, what do the foreclosure consultants tell their victims to kind of reel them in? They say things like 100% money back guarantee. They want to convince you, or they want to put you at ease that if their service doesn't work, they'll give you all their money back. They say that they know secret laws and secret programs. My favorite is the forensic audit. We'll do a forensic audit of your mortgage. Well, what is that? And just even if someone were to actually do a legitimate forensic audit on your loan to try to decipher whether or not the lender broke any laws during origination, the lender is not obligated to abide by or review that forensic audit. So a forensic audit really is useless. And going back to the picture of the ducks and the penguins, they say things like, I'm like you, I'm just like you. We see a lot of affinity fraud in these type of cases. We have, you know, Spanish speakers targeting Spanish speakers. We had a complaint where there was a Filipino American that was holding seminars for other Filipino Americans, and they were saying in these seminars that they knew secret programs to save your home. So we see a lot of fraud where there's either a similarity in language or culture, and that's what they use usually to violate your trust. And of course, they tell the homeowner not to contact their lender or servicer, don't contact their bank, you know, I'll do everything on your behalf. This is a press release for a case that we investigated about a year or two ago. There was a woman named Joanna Sosa. She was a Spanish speaker, and so naturally she targeted other Spanish speakers. She targeted homeowners that were in distress, that were at risk of losing their home. She told them that she was a wealthy investor. She said that she was a millionaire and that she knew other wealthy investors. And she said, this is what I'll do. This is the program that I've created to save your home. I will have an investor buy your home through a short sale transaction. They will become the new owner, and that will stop the foreclosure. And she said the investor will allow you to stay in the home as a tenant. So instead of being the homeowner, you will now be the renter, and you'll just send your rent every month to the investor. The rent will be very affordable. It won't be as expensive as your mortgage payment was. And in a year or two, after you've had time to save and recover your credit, the investor will sell the home back to you. Sounds like a good deal. I heard someone say, you're right. You're absolutely right. I wish that would have been the reaction to these victims when they heard about this. Unfortunately, it wasn't. They thought, wow, this is wonderful. I get to stay in the home, I won't lose it, I can save up some money and buy the home back in a few years. And she said, okay, in order for me to start this program, I need a $5,000 payment. And I need it in cash. Why do you think the scammers like money? They like cash instead of credit card payments or checks. You can't trace it. There's no paper trail. So that's always a red flag. So the homeowners paid the money, and she strung them along month after month, making them believe that she was in negotiations with their lender, that she had arranged the short sale, everything was going great. Then suddenly the homeowners will receive a frantic call from her saying, you know what, there's been some roadblocks, we've hit some challenges, the process is going to take longer than I originally thought, and it's going to cost you another $5,000. Well, the homeowners figured, well, at this point, I'm in too deep. I've been involved in this for too long. I can't turn back now. So they paid the additional money. Long story short, she never arranged not one single short sale transaction. She was not a wealthy investor. She was not a millionaire. As a matter of fact, she actually lost her own home to foreclosure. Every single victim in this case ended up losing their home to foreclosure, because instead of contacting their bank or their servicer, they put all their trust in this woman who said that she was handling everything for her. So not only did they lose all of the money that they paid, but they ended up losing the home anyway. And as I mentioned to you, we work closely at times with prosecuting and law enforcement agencies. The Attorney General's office has a new mortgage fraud strike force. So we presented our findings to them, and they accepted the case. And Joanna Sosa was recently sentenced to 6 years.
Did she pay?
6 years.
Did she give back the money?
Yeah. And this is just, oh, did she give back the money? Oh, that's a good question. There was restitution for this case. I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but the restitution that was received was not a dollar for dollar amount that the victims paid. So usually what happens is the prosecutor sees the assets, whatever they can find, whether it's cars, luxury items, homes, they seize the assets, they have a pot of money, and what they have to do is divide it up amongst the victims. Now, we had, some victims that paid $5,000, but we had one that paid $50,000 because he had 3 rental properties, so he was paying for each property. He's not going to get his whole $50,000 back. So they take the money and they divide it equally amongst the victims.
So, and this kind of goes to one of the challenges of white-collar crime and these types of things, is that the penalties often, a lot of times from people involved, people losing their homes, people getting ripped off, they don't get as much jail time as you would expect. It's different than someone who walks up to you on the street and assaults you. First of all, the white-collar criminals are smart. They're very intelligent people. They're slick talkers. They succeed because they're good at convincing people that they're honest. They come up with clever, often believable scenarios. And they often have some pretty impressive technical skills. Or like identity theft that we see, people are doing, it's some young people doing some pretty incredible things with technology. Smart people. And the way the laws are set up, the laws don't really recognize financial harm as much as physical harm sometimes. Even though the financial harm we see has huge, it can have health effects on people, it can deprive them of their livelihood, it can have a big effect. But sometimes our laws aren't structured to really penalize that the same way. And so if you look at cases like that, and 6 years doesn't necessarily seem like a fair punishment for what happened.
And when victims come to us with this type of fraud, our goal is always to make them whole. So there are many complaints that come to our office where they don't rise to the level of prosecution, but we're able to get the consumer their money back. And the consumer is satisfied, and we're happy that they got their money back. And so it may not get to this point. This is a small percentage of our cases. But again, our goal is to try to make them whole and recover their money. But for the reasons I mentioned earlier, because these people are so hard to track down, it's not always possible. All right. Switch gears a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question. It sounds like the case you have is similar to what, that I've known a person just recently, wherein she lost her house.
she was in distress because she just lost her husband, and supposedly the community foundation or something is trying to help her to help her in her mortgage. And as a result, let's see now, they told her that yes, she's going to stay there. They're going to help her, and they told her that they'll charge her like $900 per month, okay, and she had to pay in cash, no receipt.
Right.
And so anyway, she came to me and I said, you should, ask for receipt. And I tried to find whether they have a website, nothing. So anyway, but she's very, very trustworthy person because she belongs in this community, and I think it's Mexican American. And so anyway, so she at the end, she moved to Mexico, all right, Tijuana, because they said they're going to lose their house already. So she had to move. She's been evicted. My question is that, can a relative file, on behalf of that person that she was victimized? Because right now she's in distress and she's really confused. And the saddest part is that these people took her at the end, before she moved, they took her someplace to sign all the papers, probably the title or something like that. And she was really confused and she's by herself. But she has a relative in Carlsbad, a sister, and I told her just to go to, the district attorney. Yeah. But what I'm saying, can they file on her behalf, even if she's in Mexico?
So yeah,
She's a citizen, yeah.
it's part of the application process or the complaint process. At the end, you have to identify some things, like you're creating like a digital signature, and you need to be doing it on behalf of yourself because that's giving us the right to communicate that information to the other party and to look into it on their behalf. Now, if she's a resident of LA County when this occurred, she can file from anywhere. She can log on, if she has the website, she can log on in Mexico and file from there, just letting us know that when this occurred, she was a resident of LA County.
It's sad because she used to work with the Western Consulate.
Yeah.
And people took advantage of that.
Yeah, and we see that, we call that affinity fraud, when people, because of a shared connection like that, use that to defraud people. Yeah, that was it. But yeah, so if it occurred in LA County, you can apply from anywhere. We really encourage try to have the person themselves make that complaint though, because otherwise a lot of times we don't get the full information we need to investigate around the authority.
So she has, what's that limitation? She has like 1 year or something? Or is right there, she's recovering?
Should be 4 years from date of discovery.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that story that you shared with us was just a classic example of these type of scams. And it actually reminded me that sort of the latest twist of what the scammers are doing is now they're saying that their businesses are nonprofits.
Exactly.
So they're telling consumers, oh, I'm not charging you an advance fee. I'm a nonprofit 501c3, but we do require a donation. It's like tomato, right? It's the same thing, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to now present themselves as nonprofit agencies because we as a society, we just think, nonprofits are good, pro-consumer. They're not going to rip you off, but a lot of times they're lying.
But just in case they have 501c.
You can still file a complaint with us
Yeah.
because even a 501c3 has to abide by the laws that I mentioned earlier. Was there another hand? Yes.
Yeah, I have a case like this, whether I should have the person contact you guys or not. He's old, he just left from Mexico, for example, for a couple of months. He has a power of attorney for the son. The son, in the meantime, while he was in Mexico, sold his property, and then took all his money and went to Las Vegas. But in the meantime, he really have a power of attorney. This old man, when he returns, the home is somebody else. Okay. I mean, it's a fraudulent intent in a sense that the son sold the property. But in reality, look at all the paperwork. Should he approach you or should he, it's a gray area,
say yes.
Yeah. So one, any situation of elder financial abuse, we take very seriously. That's one of our core areas where we have a special program dedicated to seniors who have been financially abused. And unfortunately, often it's family members, it's loved one, it's caregivers who do that financial abuse. So definitely, I would really like to see some more information on that case and recommend to file that with us. One of the tricky things is that to really progress in that, we usually have to have the parent or the spouse, or not spouse, but parent or grandparent usually has to make the allegations official against their child or grandchild, and sometimes they're a little hesitant to do that because of the relationship, but that is needed to kind of progress that way. So they need to be aware of that they're going to need to be able to make those allegations, and that is something we really like to look into though, on a number of ways. Once the home gets sold, it makes it a lot more difficult to kind of unwind that, but it's not impossible. We've actually seen situations like that where the home was sold. We've even had sold and sold again, and we've been able to unwind it back, although those are challenging. There's a lot of challenges involved there. All right, and now I get the opportunity. If I stand away from the mic, are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I get to talk to you about the Homeowner Notification Program. Now, this is a program that goes all the way back to the late 90s. On any time that someone in LA County recorded a deed of trust, or quitclaim deed, they received a notification from the LA County Register Reporter letting them know it had been filed. And the goal of that was to say, hey, take a look at this document, make sure all the information is correct, make sure this is actually, it's your home, make sure this actually occurred. Because what was happening is we were seeing an extraordinary amount of fraud where people were just going to the Register Reporter, taking possession of properties through a quitclaim deed, forging names, and the homeowner never knew about it. The homeowner didn't know until they tried to go sell, and all of a sudden, oh, you're not the owner. Or there have been so many conflicting documents that you didn't have clear title anymore. It was clouded, and they couldn't proceed. So the Homeowner Notification Program was launched. Those 3 documents give homeowners a chance to review it and let us know if there was a problem. So that's where our role came in, is we provide information. At the very beginning of the program, people called in and said, I have a problem. The response was from Registrar Recorder was, okay, go get an attorney, which turned out to be a really costly and difficult thing. Our department came in, we were able to provide some counseling, some assistance, and in issues where we were finding fraud and forgery, we were able to investigate those and then work with the sheriff, with the DA, with the city attorney to prosecute those kinds of cases. Now, due to the foreclosure crisis, we've launched an expanded version of that program. All right. So during the foreclosure crisis, we worked with the state, and the state gave LA County specifically, just our county, authorization to expand these services to foreclosure victims. So when a notice of default, notice of sale was filed, they were able to provide an extra fee on that recorded document that then could be used to help provide information to homeowners, telling them to avoid scams, first of all, that you're going to be contacted by foreclosure consultants. They're going to promise to save your home. They're going to make these amazing promises to you. They're going to ask you for money up front. Provide all those warnings to people ahead of time, because we were seeing so many of them come to us afterwards. And that was one of the problems. Our real estate fraud division actually got overwhelmed during the foreclosure crisis because we had so many people who were falling victims to these scams. And as Dawnnesha mentioned, once you paid the money, it was so hard to track them down. So we needed to get people ahead of time, let them know about the danger right up front. As soon as those documents were recorded and the foreclosure consultants started contacting them, we needed to get to them at the same time and let them know, wait a minute, don't fall for the scams, and there is somewhere you can go for help. And so we made ourselves that place where people could come to for help. Senate Bill 62, which was passed in 2011, authorized this program in Los Angeles County. And so we've implemented it now. It has 3 components. It warns the tenants, it gives them somewhere to call, and it allows us to provide service to them to help them communicate with their lender. Because another problem that people were facing was that they're having difficulty contacting their lender, or there's just a lack of trust, where they didn't really understand. The lender would say, you need to provide us with this additional paperwork. And the homeowner would say, I don't think they really need that, I'm not going to provide it. And then that would mean their loan modification couldn't go through. And so we were seeing a lot of stories where it's just, where both sides wanted to work together, but for some reason they just, a lack of trust, a lack of communication, it wasn't happening. And we wanted to help make that happen because we thought it was very beneficial to be able to keep those people in their homes. So, here is an idea of now we used to have kind of a very kind of government-looking letter that was very official and honestly a little bit bland and boring. Now we've tried to make it a little more exciting. This is actually a poster that we've developed in partnership with Registrar Recorder to help let people know about their services. We've tried to make it more eye-catching the scammers are very, very good at making stuff eye-catching. Their promises are excellent. Their pitches are slick. We needed to make ours jump out a little more. Still official, you still got the county seal on there, you still got County of Los Angeles, but helps draw in the homeowners a little more. Get their eyes on it, make them read it.
And so when someone in foreclosure comes to us, we again provide that one-on-one assistance and that hand-holding assistance to contact their lender, contact their servicer, assess their situation, help them determine the best options, and then, if applicable, assist them in getting a loan modification or some other workout solution.
So, go back up. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I've heard you like stories. So let me tell you about a couple of the recent stories that we had so far in this program. In one of them, we had a widow whose husband had recently passed away, and she still had the money to pay her mortgage. But unfortunately, she had not been put on title. It was just her husband, and the bank didn't have authorization to continue working with her. Now she understood that. She went to probate, and she got authorization to make payments on behalf of his estate. But unfortunately, she was having a lot of difficulty communicating that to the bank. She just wasn't able to explain to them that she was now the authorized person to make these payments. Also, she would qualify for loan modification based on her new income, but the bank wasn't able to negotiate with her because they didn't feel like that she was the appropriate person for the estate, since they were looking for her husband, who was unfortunately deceased. At that point, she contacted her home had gone into foreclosure. She received a notice of default, and she contacted our department. At that point, one of our foreclosure prevention assistants was able to connect with her and the bank and work out what she needed to provide to the bank to help them understand that she was now the person that could act on behalf of the estate. She was able to provide it. She was able, it moved very quickly from then. Once they got talking, they approved the loan modification, and she was able to make more affordable payments and was able to continuing living in that home that she lived in for years and years with her family. So we were really happy, and the widow was able to continue to live out her life in that house. So that was a good story there. Another one we had actually involved, it was a play on the foreclosure consultant thing that Dawnnesha's been telling you about. This one was an attorney, and he said he was an attorney, and he really was. He was an actual licensed attorney with State Bar, and he was actually pretty good. He was not bad at getting foreclosure loan modifications. He helped people. His trick was, what he did was, he applied for the loan modification, and it got approved. There was new payments, and then he told the homeowner that as part of those payments, you make the payments to me now, and I'll pay them for you. And so he got them all the way. All the homeowner had to do was make 3 trial payments on the new loan modification, and the loan modification was approved. And the homeowner made those 3 trial payments to the attorney, who kept the money, and then the bank denied the trial loan mod, and it went back, and the house went to foreclosure. So at that point, he contacted us. He was not the only one. This attorney was quite the successful attorney. He was pulling the scam off with many, many people. And in fact, and many by word of mouth, because friends would go to their other friends and say, oh, he's great. He knows exactly what he's doing. And so we were able to work with the bank, explain the bank situation. The bank was willing to, if those trial payments were made, they were willing to reinstate the loan. And so we worked with the homeowner. He did have the money available. He made those trial payments in one lump sum. His loan was brought current, and he's able now to continue with much more affordable loan amount in that home. The attorney has been investigated by the State Bar and was recently disbarred. So that was good news. And there's possible civil action going against him to recoup a lot of the money. And victims have also been able to apply for restitution through the State Bar. So that was a good story along. And an example of working with our partners. That a lot of times we can help work with the victim on one side, and someone else, in this case the State Bar, we can work with them to help prosecute on the other side or help take regulatory action. So that was a really good story. But it's stories like that, and we see a lot of them, about people in need who have tried very hard to keep their homes, tried very hard to do what they're supposed to do, and have just been taken advantage of by scammers. And that's why this program for us has been so important, because it's allowed us to let people know that we're out here, that we have these services available, and that we can help them, so they don't fall for these scams that are out there. And there's a lot of them. And even though the foreclosure crisis it's not as bad as it has been, we're still seeing 3,000 people a month getting foreclosure notices, notice of default, notice of sale, and so it's still impacting a huge number of people in Los Angeles County right now.
Yes.
I have a question about the SB 62. Like, since it passed, how fast do you guys take to notify the homeowners? Because right now the traditional route, when it gets recorded and it gets published in the newspapers, right? It takes maybe like 2 weeks or so before we figure it out and we're able to talk to them. And sometimes it's like between recording and the sale, it's much faster.
Yeah, and that's something we struggled with actually, is because the scammers get out there very, very quickly, and so we're kind of a race to them to get the notifications out. Right now, by statute, we have the registrar recorder has 20 days to make that mailing out. Usually, they do it a lot faster than that. What we're seeing is it usually gets out in about 7 days from when the recording happens to when they get the notification. But it has, by statute, they have up to 20, and that has to do with the process for identifying it, and then a third-party contractor actually does the mailing out of the notices with the additional information on how we can help.
Okay, and just for your information, in the county of Los Angeles, many of the homes that are in foreclosure are actually occupied by tenants. They're rental properties, so the homeowner doesn't actually live there. And there was a law that went into effect in 2009 called the Protecting Tenants at Foreclosure Act. And that law states that tenants are entitled to a 90-day notice. And so what was happening is a property would foreclose, and then the tenant would be told, well, I'm sorry, can you be gone in 3 days? So this law says that tenants are entitled to 90 days. And if they have a lease, according to this law, they can stay in the property for the remainder of their lease. So if they still have 6 months left on their lease, they are allowed to stay in that property for 6 months. If they don't have a lease or a written rental agreement, then they are entitled to 90 days. And just so you know, LA County actually has a website called housing.lacounty.gov. That is the housing resource center for the county. It has all sorts of housing information. It has information on first-time buyer programs. So if you're working with potential home buyers and they want to research what first-time home buyers they may qualify for, this is a great website for them. There's also information on emergency shelters. So let's say you are in a situation where someone lost their home to foreclosure and now you've been hired to put that property on MLS back on the market and that occupant has nowhere to go. You can refer them to this website. There's information there on emergency shelters and specialized housing like low-income housing or housing for seniors. Lots of great information there. Consumers can also use this website to look for affordable rental properties in the county as well. And so with that, we are at the end of our presentation. I hope that you've learned something. And if you're interested in staying up to date on consumer and real estate fraud information, please follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook. We put out a lot of scam alerts and a lot of news alerts on our social media sites. Were there any questions for us before we conclude? Yes.
One question. Your last previous 2 slides, you talked about rent control, about they don't have to move out. Can you clarify that PowerPoint a little bit?
Okay. So I was referring to the tenants in foreclosure. They are entitled to a 90-day notice.
But
so
they are required to go after we serve a 90 days notice, right?
if they don't have a lease, that gives them more time.
How much more time are you talking about?
Whatever time is remaining on their lease. So if their lease says that they still have 5 months left, then they get more than the 90 days. They get the 5 months on that lease.
But if we have a lease, all we have to do is just serve them a 90 days and they have to go, right? Even though they're under the rent control section, right?
No.
Are we talking about LA City here?
Yeah.
Within LA City, if they have a lease and they go into foreclosure, then the new owner has to abide by the terms of the previous lease. So let's say they had a lease that went through 2014, and they got foreclosed upon, and the tenant was there, the new buyer would then be obligated through that lease through 2014, if it was in LA City.
Let me see if I can clarify my question. So the lease is expired. They already fulfilled the 12-month lease.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's in foreclosure. And they're under rent control section. So as a new owner, I come in and I give them the proper 90 days notice. I have the right to do that, right?
I would say for any rent control issue, contact the rent control office. Rent control has a lot of special laws and regulations for people that fall under the RSO ordinance. Our department does not handle rent control issues. So we will address all other landlord-tenant issues, assuming that that person does not live under rent control. Anyone that is in the city who is under rent control should contact the city's housing department, because again, rent control is very specific, and rent control tenants get a lot of special protections that don't apply to other tenants.
So our counselors can answer questions up to a certain point, but if it gets to really complicated kind of detailed questions like that, that's where we want to refer you over to LA City Housing.
Thank you. The law doesn't make sense, because it has no lease, get at least 90-day notice. Or what happened to the tenant and landlord get a month-to-month agreement? Okay, that's 30 days notice. There's plenty of time, you know.
Well, the intent of the law was
Oh,
to not have tenants be blindsided and not to be forced to get out all of a sudden without enough time for them to prepare to exit.
So you're right. It provided additional victims of foreclosure, tenants in foreclosed houses did have an additional protection above and beyond what would be in a normal just sale process.
Yes.
Do they have to pay rent during the 90 days?
Yes, they still have to pay rent during the 90
If
days.
they don't move out 90 days, what happens?
Now, if they fail to pay their rent, then that changes things, right? Then you can give them the 3-day notice to pay or quit.
If they don't move out in 90 days, what action you can take?
If they don't move out when they're supposed to after the 90 days, you give them the notice to vacate, the 3-day notice to get out. If they are still there after that notice expires, then you file the unlawful detainer. Yes, in the yellow shirt?
It says effective May 21st up to December.
Yes.
That means on December.
Then it expires, and then the law reverts back to what it was prior,
Unless the legislature extends it during this year.
unless it's extended.
Yeah, that's the sunset date of this year.
Yeah.
Is it the same apply to both residential and commercial leases?
This applies to residential properties, so 1 to 4 units doesn't apply to commercial. Good question. Okay, well, thank you so much for being such an attentive audience. I hope you learned something. Thank you for being here today.